The morning sky on Kepler 442b burned red through the thick atmosphere. Tae-ho moved through the crystal forest with his unit, their heavy boots crushing the glowing fragments beneath their feet. His armor was black and thick, covering his 7-foot frame like a second skin. The other Vorthak warriors followed behind him, their weapons ready. "Sector 12 clear," came the voice through his helmet radio. It was Jiwoo, his closest friend since training days. No human movement detected. Tae-ho nodded and checked his scanner. The device showed heat patterns through the trees. 3 days ago, a human transport ship had crashed somewhere in this area. Command wanted all survivors found and eliminated. No prisoners. No mercy. That was the Vorthak way. The coalition had been fighting humans for 2 years now. The war started when humans refused to leave their colony worlds. They called it defending their homes. The coalition called it rebellion. Tae-ho had never questioned which side was right. Vorthak warriors followed orders. That was what made them the best soldiers in the galaxy. A broken branch caught his attention. Then another. Someone had passed this way recently. Tae-ho raised his hand, signaling his unit to stop. He pointed 2 fingers forward, then made a fist. Silent approach. The trail led to a clearing where twisted metal lay scattered across the ground. It was the remains of a human medical transport. White boxes with red crosses were scattered everywhere, their contents spilled across the crystal grass. Bandages, medicine bottles, and strange human medical tools lay broken and useless. Tae-ho heard something, a soft sound, like someone crying. He held up his hand again, stopping his unit. The sound came from under a large piece of the ship's hull. He moved closer, his weapon raised. A human hand stuck out from under the metal. It was small and pale, covered in blood. As Tae-ho got closer, he saw more. A human female, trapped under the heavy debris. She was trying to reach for a medical kit just beyond her grasp. She looked up at him. Her eyes were dark and defiant, even though she was clearly hurt and trapped. She said something in her language. Tae-ho could not understand the words, but her tone was not begging. She was not asking for mercy. She was still trying to help others, even while dying herself. Tae-ho raised his weapon. One shot would end it quickly, but something made him pause. The human female kept reaching for the medical kit. There were other humans nearby, wounded and dying. Even trapped and bleeding, she was still trying to save them. In Vorthak culture, warriors were taught that humans were weak and selfish. They ran from battle and abandoned their wounded. But this human was doing the opposite. She was sacrificing herself for others, just like a Vorthak warrior would. "Tae-ho, what is your status?" Jiwoo's voice crackled through the radio. The human woman looked at him. She was young, maybe the same age as his sister back home. She had short black hair and wore the white coat of a medical worker. Her name tag said something in human writing that he could not read. "Target down," Tae-ho said into his radio. "Moving to next sector." He was lying. He had never lied to his unit before, but something about this human made him hesitate. Maybe it was the way she kept trying to help others. Maybe it was how she looked at him without fear, only determination. Tae-ho looked around the clearing. His unit was already moving to the next area. He was alone with the human. He made a decision that would change everything. Instead of shooting, he holstered his weapon. The human watched him with surprise. Tae-ho grabbed the heavy metal piece and lifted it. His Vorthak strength made it easy. The human female scrambled free, her leg clearly broken. She looked at him with confusion, but immediately crawled to the medical kit. She began treating a wounded human male who lay nearby. Even hurt and confused, her first thought was helping others. Tae-ho heard voices on his radio. His unit was calling for him. He looked at the human one more time. She was working on the wounded man using supplies from the kit. She looked up at Tae-ho and nodded once. It was not gratitude exactly, but acknowledgement. One warrior to another. "Coming," Tae-ho said into his radio. He turned and walked away, leaving the humans alive. As he rejoined his unit, Jiwoo looked at him strangely. "You took a long time back there." "Debris was blocking my scanner," Taeho replied. "Had to clear it manually." Jiwoo nodded, but his eyes showed doubt. They had been friends for 10 years. Jiwoo knew when something was different. That night, back at the Coalition base, Taeho could not sleep. He kept thinking about the human female, her determination, her willingness to help others even when she was dying. It reminded him of stories his father told about ancient Vorthak heroes. The next morning brought new orders. Command wanted a full sweep of the area. Every human was to be eliminated before the orbital bombardment began in 5 days. Taeho felt something cold in his stomach. The bombardment would kill everyone in the area, including the wounded humans the female was trying to save. He found himself walking back to the crash site during his patrol. The area was empty now. The humans had moved, probably to find shelter. But Taeho could track them. His training made him an excellent hunter. Their trail led deeper into the crystal forest, toward the old mining caves. Smart. The caves would protect them from scanners and provide shelter, but they would also trap them when the bombardment came. Taeho found their camp just as the sun was setting. It was bigger than he expected. Not just soldiers, but families, old humans, young ones, even small children. They had set up a medical area where the female from the crash site was treating wounded people. She looked up as he approached. This time, she did not seem surprised to see him. She said something to the other humans, who moved the children behind rocks. Then she stood up and walked toward him. Up close, Taeho could see her name tag more clearly. The human letters spelled something that looked like Hana. She pointed to herself and said the word slowly. "Hana?" Then she pointed at him and tilted, her head asking his name. Taeho hesitated. Telling her his name would make this real. It would make her a person, not just a target. "Taeho," he said finally. Hana smiled slightly and nodded. Then she gestured toward the wounded humans. She was asking for help or maybe just understanding. Taeho looked at the scene. Families taking care of each other, medical workers helping, anyone who needed it. Children playing quietly despite their fear. It looked nothing like the savage, selfish humans his commanders described. It looked like people. People who cared about each other, just like Vorthak families. Taeho turned and walked away without shooting anyone. But he knew he would be back. The question was no longer whether he would help them. The question was how. Taeho returned to the human camp 3 days later. This time he carried a medical supply pack stolen from the Coalition stores. He told himself he was just gathering intelligence, but deep down, he knew the truth. He was helping the enemy. Hana was sitting by a small fire, cleaning medical tools. When she saw him approach, she stood slowly. Her broken leg was wrapped in makeshift bandages, but she could walk. She watched him carefully as he set down the supply pack. "Thank you," she said in basic Coalition language. The words were simple but clear. She had been learning. Taeho nodded. He opened the pack and showed her the contents. Proper bandages, antiseptic, pain medicines, things the humans desperately needed. Hana's eyes widened when she saw the supplies. She began examining each item, clearly familiar with their uses. Then she looked up at him and pointed to herself, then to the supplies, then to the wounded humans nearby. She was asking permission to use them. "Yes," Taeho said in his own language. Then he tried the human word he had heard her use. "Yes." 4. The next hour, Taeho watched Hana work. She moved between the wounded humans with skill and care. An old man with a chest wound, a young woman with burns on her arms, a child with a broken wrist. Hana treated each one with the same gentle attention. What surprised Taeho most was how the humans responded to her. They trusted her completely. Even the children stopped crying when she touched them. This was not just medical skill. This was something deeper. Leadership through caring. Hana finished with the last patient and returned to where Tai-Ho waited. She pulled out a small device from her pocket. It looked like a data pad, but smaller. She pressed buttons on it, and images appeared on the screen. The first image showed a blue and green planet, Earth. Hana pointed to it and said, "Home." Then more images appeared. Mountains covered in green trees, cities with tall buildings, oceans so blue they looked like jewels. Tai-Ho had seen planets like this before. The Coalition had conquered dozens of them, but he had never thought about the people who lived there, the families who called those places home. Hana showed him more pictures, a group of humans standing together, all wearing white medical coats. She pointed to herself in the photo, then to the others. Her medical team, probably her friends, some of them might be dead now. Then she showed him pictures of a city by the ocean. Tall buildings rose from the water's edge, and small boats filled a busy harbor. Cherry trees lined the streets, their pink flowers creating tunnels of color. Hana's face softened as she looked at these images. "Busan," she said, pointing to the city. Then she looked at Tai-Ho. "Home." She was showing him what the humans were fighting for, not conquest or resources, but home. The right to live in the places they loved, with the people they cared about. Tai-Ho felt something strange in his chest. Guilt, maybe, or sadness. He thought about his own home planet, the red mountains where he had played as a child, the crystal caves where his family lived. What would he do if aliens came to take it away? Coalition, Hana said suddenly. She had learned another word. She pointed to images on her device. These were different. They showed destroyed buildings and burning forests, bodies in the streets. Human bodies. She scrolled through more images. They were recordings from her medical scanner, stored automatically during treatments. Coalition forces using chemical weapons on civilian targets. Vorthak warriors killing. Humans who were trying to surrender. Children running from burning schools. Tai-Ho stared at the images. His commanders had told him the humans were attacking Coalition worlds. But these pictures showed the opposite. The Coalition was the aggressor. They were the ones destroying homes and killing families. Why? Hana asked in Coalition language. She was looking directly at him. Why war? Tai-Ho did not know how to answer. He had been told the humans were dangerous, that they would destroy the galaxy if not stopped. But the humans he saw here were just trying to survive. They were taking care of each other, not planning attacks. A sound from the trees made them. Both look up. Someone was coming. Tai-Ho quickly put away the medical supplies and stepped back from Hana. She understood and moved away, pretending to tend the fire. Jiwoo emerged from the crystal forest. His weapon was ready and his scanner was active. Tai-Ho, I have been looking for you. You did not report your position. Scanner malfunction, Tai-Ho replied. I was trying to fix it. Jiwoo looked around the area. His eyes stopped on the human camp. Perfect. I count 15 targets. We can eliminate them now. No, Tai-Ho said quickly. Orders are to wait for the orbital bombardment. Why waste ammunition? Jiwoo frowned. Since when do you care about saving ammunition? You usually prefer close combat. That was true. Tai-Ho was known for his aggressive fighting style. His sudden caution would seem strange to anyone who knew him well. I want to study their tactics first, Tai-Ho said. Learn how they hide from our scanners. It might be useful in future battles. It was a weak excuse, but Jiwoo accepted it. Fine, but we should set up observation posts, monitor their movements. I will handle that, Tai-Ho said. You report back to base. Tell them the sector is under surveillance. After Jiwoo left, Tai-Ho realized how close they had come to disaster. If Jiwoo had seen him talking with Hana or noticed the medical supplies, everything would have been over. But it also made him realize something else. He was protecting the humans now, not just ignoring them or avoiding them, actively protecting them. When had that happened? He looked back at the camp. Hana was watching him from across the clearing. She had understood the danger and played her part perfectly. But there was a question in her eyes. She wanted to know if he was really on their side. Tae-ho made a decision. He walked back to where she sat by the fire. This time, he did not try to hide his approach. He sat down across from her, close enough that the other humans could see them, together. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He removed his helmet. Hana was the first human to see his actual face. Not the armored mask of a Vorthak warrior, but just Tae-ho. Hana smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen from any human. Not the careful expressions they showed when trying to survive, but genuine warmth. She reached into her medical kit and pulled out a small mirror. She held it up so Tae-ho could see himself. His reflection showed dark eyes and pale skin, similar to humans, but with the sharper features of his species. Scars from training and battle marked his jaw and forehead. But without the helmet, he looked less like a monster and more like a person. Good, Hana said in coalition language. Then she tried to say something in Vorthak. The pronunciation was terrible, but he understood the meaning. She was calling him friend. For the first time since the war began, Tae-ho smiled back. The plague started 2 weeks after Tae-ho began visiting the human camp. At first, it seemed like a normal illness. One Vorthak warrior developed a fever and weakness in his limbs. Then another. Within days, half the coalition forces on Kepler 442b were sick. Ji-woo was among the worst affected. Tae-ho found him in the medical bay, his skin pale and breathing shallow. The coalition doctors had no idea what was causing the illness. Their medicines were not working. It started in the western sectors, the medical officer explained to Tae-ho. Same area where we deployed the new biological weapon against human settlements. But this should not affect Vorthak physiology. Tae-ho felt cold fear in his stomach. Biological weapon. They had used a disease against civilians, and now it was killing his own people. Will Ji-woo survive? Tae-ho asked. The doctor shook his head. Not without better treatment. We are losing 2 or 3 warriors every day. Command is demanding answers, but we have none. That night, Tae-ho made a desperate decision. He carefully lifted Ji-woo from his medical bed and carried him through the crystal forest. Ji-woo was barely conscious, mumbling fever dreams about home and family. The human camp was quiet when Tae-ho arrived. Most of the refugees were sleeping in the caves nearby. But Hana was awake as he had hoped. She was sitting outside the main cave looking at the stars. When she saw Tae-ho carrying Ji-woo, she immediately understood. She pointed to a flat area near the medical supplies and helped Tae-ho lay his friend down. Then she began examining. Ji-woo with her scanner. Biological weapon, she said in coalition language. Your people used it on our children. Tae-ho felt shame burn in his chest. He had not known about the weapon, but that did not make it better. His people had used disease against families, against children. Hana worked quickly. She used her scanner to analyze Ji-woo's blood and tissue. The readings meant nothing to Tae-ho, but Hana nodded with understanding. She had seen this illness before. Human treatment, she said, showing Tae-ho her scanner. Different biology. What kills us helps you. She began preparing medicines from her supplies, not coalition drugs, but human ones. She mixed different compounds together, creating something new. Then she injected it into Ji-woo's arm. For the next 3 hours, Hana worked to save Ji-woo's life. She monitored his breathing, checked his temperature, and adjusted the medicine as needed. Tae-ho watched in amazement. This human was using her skills to save the life of someone who had probably tried to kill her people. Why? Tae-ho asked. Why help him? Hana looked up from her work. Doctor, she said, pointing to herself. Help everyone, always. It was a simple answer, but it shook Tae-ho to his core. Hana was not helping Ji-woo because she liked him or because she wanted something in return. She was helping him because helping people was what she did. It was who she was. As the sun rose, Ji-woo's fever broke. His breathing became steady, and color returned to his skin. He opened his eyes and looked around in confusion. "Where am I?" he asked in Vorthak. Before Tae-ho could answer, Ji-woo saw Hana. His hand went to his weapon, but Tae-ho stopped him. "She saved your life," Tae-ho said. "You were dying from the plague. Her medicine cured you." Ji-woo stared at Hana, then at Tae-ho, then back at Hana. "A human saved me?" "Yes," Tae-ho said. "She has been treating the illness that our own doctors could not cure." Ji-woo tried to sit up. Hana gently pushed him back down and said something in her language. Her tone was clear even without translation. "Rest. Recover. She says you need more time to heal," Tae-ho explained. For the next hour, Ji-woo watched Hana work with other patients. She treated a human child with a broken arm, then an old man with breathing problems. Every person received the same careful attention. "This is not what we were told about humans," Ji-woo said quietly. "No," Tae-ho agreed. "It is not." Hana brought them food and water. Simple things, but offered freely. She also brought her data pad and showed them more images from her home world. Pictures of Vorthak prisoners being cared for in human medical facilities. Coalition soldiers, who had been captured, not killed. "Your commanders lied to you," she said in careful coalition language. "We do not kill prisoners. We help them." Ji-woo looked at the images with growing shock. "These are our people, alive, being treated by human doctors." "Yes," Hana said, "always help, never kill unless must." She showed them more recordings from her medical scanner. But these were different from the ones she had shown Tae-ho before. These showed coalition forces preparing the biological weapon, Vorthak scientists mixing chemicals, human families getting sick and dying. "Your weapon," she explained, "made to kill human children, but changed. Now kills your people too." The truth hit Tae-ho like a physical blow. The coalition had created a weapon to kill human families, but the weapon had mutated or changed somehow. Now it was killing Vorthak warriors instead. Ji-woo was staring at the recordings with horror. "We did this. We created this plague." "Your leaders did this," Hana corrected. "Not you. You are soldiers. You follow orders." But her kindness made it worse, not better. She was excusing them even though their people had tried to commit genocide. Even though they were enemies, she was treating them with compassion. "How many?" Ji-woo asked. "How many human children died from our weapon?" Hana's face became sad. She showed them a number on her scanner. Thousands. Thousands of children dead from a disease created in coalition laboratories. Ji-woo closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. "What can we do? How can we stop this?" It was the question Tae-ho had been afraid to ask himself, but hearing it from Ji-woo made it real. They were not just individuals anymore. They were conspirators, rebels against their own people. "First, save your soldiers," Hana said. "I can make more medicine, cure the plague." "Why would you do that?" Ji-woo asked. "We are your enemies." "Sick people are not enemies," Hana replied. "Sick people are patients." Over the next few days, Hana taught Tae-ho and Ji-woo how to prepare the medicine. She showed them which human compounds worked against the plague and how to mix them properly. Soon, they were secretly treating sick Vorthak warriors. The other soldiers did not ask questions. They were too grateful to be alive. But Tae-ho and Ji-woo both knew they were crossing a line they could never uncross. "Command will notice that. Our unit has fewer deaths," Ji-woo said one evening. "Yes," Tae-ho agreed. And they will want to know why. Then we tell them we found a treatment in the human supplies, Jiwoo suggested. A captured medicine that happened to work. It was a reasonable lie, but it would only work for so long. Eventually, someone would discover the truth. When that happened, Taiho and Jiwoo would be executed as traitors. Looking at Hana as she treated another sick warrior, Taiho realized he did not care. Some things were worth the risk. Some people were worth saving, even if it cost everything. The question was no longer whether they would be caught. The question was how much good they could do before that happened. Commander Dae-sung called all unit leaders to the main base for an emergency briefing. Taiho had never liked the commander. Dae-sung was cruel even by Vorthak standards, known for his hatred of all non-coalition species. The briefing room was packed with warriors from across the planet. Dae-sung stood at the front, his black armor polished to a mirror shine. Behind him, a holographic display showed the orbital bombardment schedule. "Warriors!" Dae-sung began, his voice cold and sharp. "The human infestation on this planet ends in 48 hours. Orbital platforms are in position. Every human settlement will be destroyed." The display showed target zones across the planet's surface. Taiho felt his heart stop when he saw the crystal forest marked in red. The area where Hana and the refugees were hiding would be completely destroyed. "Sir," one of the unit leaders asked, "what about coalition forces still on the surface?" "All units will withdraw to the northern base before bombardment begins," Dae-sung replied. "Any coalition personnel remaining in target zones will be considered acceptable losses." Acceptable losses. Taiho thought about the sick warriors he and Hana had been treating. Some of them were still too weak to travel quickly. The bombardment would kill them too. "The plague situation has improved in some sectors," another officer reported. "Death rates have dropped significantly in Units 7 through 12. Dae-sung's eyes focused on the officer. "Explain." "Unknown, sir. The illness seems to be running its course naturally. Some warriors are recovering." Taiho felt Jiwoo tense beside him. Their secret medicine program was working too well. They had saved too many lives, and now command was noticing. "Interesting," Dae-sung said. "I want full medical reports from those units. If they discovered something useful, other sectors need to know." After the briefing, Taiho and Jiwoo walked back to their unit in silence. Both were thinking the same thing. They had less than 2 days to save hundreds of human refugees, and they were about to be investigated for their suspicious success against the plague. "We have to warn them," Jiwoo said quietly. "How?" Taiho replied. "Any communication will be monitored, and even if we warn them, where can they go? The entire planet will be bombarded." They reached their barracks and found a message waiting. All unit leaders were to report their current positions and patrol routes. Command wanted detailed maps of every coalition movement on the planet. Taiho stared at the message. This was not just about the bombardment. This was about finding leaks, finding traitors, finding him. That night, Taiho made his way to the human camp for what might be the last time. The refugees had grown more comfortable with his visits. Children no longer hid when they saw him. Some even waved. Hana was treating a young boy who had fallen and hurt his arm. She looked up when Taiho approached and immediately saw something. "What's wrong? What is it?" she asked in coalition language. Taiho sat down beside her. How could he explain that everyone she cared about would be dead in 2 days? How could he tell her that his own people were planning to burn the entire planet? "Big attack coming," he said finally. "From space. All humans will die." Hana's hands stopped moving. The boy she was treating looked between them, sensing the adult fear even if he did not understand the words. "When?" Hana asked. 2 days. Maybe less." Hana was quiet for a long moment. Then she began working on the boy's arm again, her movements, careful and steady. "Can we escape?" Taiho shook his head. Nowhere to go. Ships are watched. Planet will be surrounded. Then we fight, Hana said simply. Against orbital bombardment? Impossible. Hana finished bandaging the boy's arm and sent him back to his family. Then she looked directly at Tae-ho. Maybe we cannot win, but we can try to save some people. She was not talking about fighting the bombardment itself. She was talking about evacuation, getting as many people as possible away from the planet before the attack began. Coalition transport ships, Tae-ho said, understanding. Her idea. If we could steal one, you know the codes, the schedules. Hana's eyes were bright with desperate hope. Could we do it? Tae-ho thought about it. Stealing a transport ship would be nearly impossible, but nearly impossible was better than certain death. One ship, he said. Maybe 50 people, not everyone. 50 people is better than nobody, Hana replied. They spent the next hour planning. The transport depot was heavily guarded, but Tae-ho knew the shift schedules. There would be a small window during the guard change when security was weakest. The bigger problem was getting the refugees to the depot without being seen. It was a 20-kilometer walk through open ground. Even at night, coalition sensors would detect a large group moving. Small groups, Hana suggested. Move separately. Meet at the ship. It was dangerous. If even one group was caught, the entire plan would fail. But they had no choice. As they discussed details, Ji-woo appeared at the edge of the camp. Tae-ho tensed, ready for confrontation. But Ji-woo walked calmly to where they sat. I know what. You are planning, he said to both of them. And I want to help. Tae-ho stared at his oldest friend. You could be executed for treason. We could all be executed, Ji-woo replied. But at least we would die trying to save innocent people instead of watching them burn. Hana looked between the two Vorthak warriors. Then she smiled, the same warm expression she had shown Tae-ho when he first removed his helmet. Thank you, she said to Ji-woo. Both of you. They revised their plan to include Ji-woo's help. 2 Vorthak warriors could provide much better security for the evacuation. They could also access more areas of the transport depot. But as they made their final preparations, alarms began sounding from the direction of the coalition base. Emergency lights lit up the night sky, and aircraft began circling the area. Someone knows, Ji-woo said grimly. Through his radio, Tae-ho heard Commander Dae-sung's voice ordering all units to report their positions immediately. Search teams were being organized. Someone was suspected of treason. We have to go now, Tae-ho said. Tonight, before they find us. Hana nodded and began gathering the refugees. There was no time for careful planning or small groups. Everyone would have to move together and hope for the best. As families packed their few belongings, Tae-ho realized that this moment changed everything. Once they started moving toward the transport depot, there would be no going back. They would be committed to saving these people or dying with them. Looking at Hana as she helped an elderly woman pack her medicines, Tae-ho felt something he had never experienced before. Not duty to the coalition or loyalty to his unit, but something deeper. Purpose. For the first time in his life, he knew exactly why he was fighting. The evacuation was about to begin. The refugee group moved through the crystal forest like shadows. 43 humans, including 12 children and 6 elderly people who could barely walk. Tae-ho and Ji-woo stayed at the edges of the group, their weapons ready and sensors scanning for coalition patrols. Hana had organized the humans into family groups, with the strongest helping the weakest. An old woman named So-jin carried 2 small children when their parents needed to help others. A young man called Min-ho had created makeshift stretchers for those who could not walk far. Transport depot is 3 kilometers ahead, Ji-woo whispered through the radio. I see lights but no movement. Tae-ho checked his scanner. The depot showed normal security patterns. 2 guards at the main gate, 1 patrol walking the perimeter every 20 minutes. It looked routine, but that might be a trap. Coalition. Command is still calling for position reports, Jiwoo continued. They know someone is missing. Through the trees, Taeho could see the depot. 3 transport ships sat on landing pads, their engines cold but ready. The middle ship was their target, a medium-range transport that could carry 50 people to the next star system. Wait here, Taeho told Hana. We need to get security codes first, but Hana shook her head. Too dangerous to split up. We go together. She was right. If the security guards discovered Taeho and Jiwoo were traitors, the humans would be defenseless. Better to stay together and face whatever came. They approached the depot from the east side, where cargo containers created shadows to hide in. The perimeter guard was walking away from them, following his regular route. Perfect timing. Taeho and Jiwoo walked boldly toward the main gate, looking like normal coalition soldiers returning from patrol. The guards recognized their unit markings and opened the gate without question. Sector 12 secure, Taeho reported. To the gate guards. We need to file patrol reports before the shift change. The guards nodded and waved them through. So far, everything was working. But the hardest part was still ahead. The transport ship's entry ramp was locked with security codes that changed every hour. Taeho accessed the depot computer system using his command authorization. The codes appeared on his scanner just as alarms began sounding from the direction of the main coalition base. All units report to stations immediately, came Commander Dae-sung's voice over the radio. Security breach in progress. Possible traitor activity. The gate guards looked at each other with confusion. Then they looked at Taeho and Jiwoo. Suspicion was starting to replace trust. You two, one guard called out. Commander wants all patrol leaders back at base. Now! Of course, Taeho replied calmly. We just need to secure our equipment first. But the guard was reaching for his weapon. I said now, leave the equipment. Jiwoo moved faster. His weapon fired once, dropping the guard before he could raise an alarm. The second guard tried to run, but Taeho stopped him with a stun blast. So much for the quiet approach, Jiwoo said grimly. Taeho activated the transport ship's entry. Codes. The ramp lowered with a mechanical hum. Get everyone aboard. We have maybe 5 minutes before backup arrives. Hana was already moving the refugees toward the ship when the first coalition aircraft appeared over the forest. Searchlights swept across the depot, looking for intruders. Move faster, Taeho urged as families ran up the transport ramp. The elderly woman So Jin was helping children find seats, while Minho checked the ship's systems. 3 minutes. The refugees were aboard, but the engines needed time to warm up. Through the depot's external cameras, Taeho could see coalition ground vehicles approaching fast. They have us surrounded, Jiwoo observed, watching the scanner displays. 8 vehicles, maybe 30 soldiers. The first ground vehicle reached the depot just as the transport engines came online. Coalition soldiers jumped out and took positions behind cargo containers. Their leader was calling for the occupants to surrender. Can we take off under fire? Hana asked. Minho was studying the ship's control systems. Maybe, but they will shoot us down before we reach orbit. That was when Jiwoo made his decision. Not if they are busy with something else. He grabbed a weapon from the ship's emergency supplies and headed for the exit ramp. Taeho realized what his friend was planning and grabbed his arm. No, we find another way. There is no other way, Jiwoo replied. These people need time to escape. Someone has to give them that time. He was right, and they both knew it. The transport ship was too slow and clumsy to outrun coalition fighters. But if the ground forces were distracted, the ship might reach the cover of the asteroid belt. I will come with you, Taeho said. No. Jiwoo's voice was firm. You know how to pilot this ship. These people need you to get them to safety. Before Taeho could argue further, Jiwoo was gone. He ran down the exit ramp and disappeared into the maze of cargo containers. Within seconds, weapons fire erupted across the depot. Taeho sealed the ship and moved to the pilot's seat. The transport lifted off slowly, its engines struggling with the full passenger load. Through the cockpit window, he could see muzzle flashes as Ji-Woo fought a running battle with Coalition soldiers. "He is buying us time," Hana said quietly. She had come to stand beside the pilot's seat. "He is dying for us," Tae-ho corrected. The transport cleared the depot and began climbing toward orbit. Behind them, the weapons fire was getting more intense. Ji-Woo was holding off 30 soldiers by himself, but it could not last long. Then Tae-ho heard his friend's voice over the radio one last time. "Tae-ho, remember what honor really means? Show them." The radio went silent. A few seconds later, a massive explosion lit up the depot. Ji-Woo had detonated the fuel storage tanks, taking several Coalition soldiers with him. Tae-ho closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the loss of his oldest friend. When he opened them again, Hana was watching him with understanding. "He saved us all," she said. "Yes," Tae-ho agreed. "Now we have to make sure his sacrifice was worth it." The transport reached orbit just as Coalition fighters began launching from the main base. But they were too late. The ship was already jumping to hyperspace, carrying 43 human refugees toward safety. As the stars stretched into lines around them, Tae-ho felt something change inside himself. He was no longer a Vorthak warrior following Coalition orders. He was no longer even a rebel fighting against his own people. He was something new, a protector, a guardian of innocent lives. And he would spend the rest of his life making sure Ji-Woo's sacrifice meant something. In the passenger section, families were comforting crying children and tending to the elderly. So Jin was organizing food and water distribution. Minho was helping injured refugees find comfortable places to rest. These were the people Ji-Woo had died to save. Not soldiers or politicians, but ordinary people who just wanted to live in peace. Looking at them, Tae-ho understood why his friend had made the ultimate sacrifice. Some things were worth dying for, but more importantly, some things were worth living for. The transport ship flew on through the darkness, carrying its precious cargo toward an uncertain but hopeful future. The stolen transport ship limped through space with failing engines and a cracked hull. 2 days after escaping Kepler 442b, warning lights flashed across the control panel. Life support was running low, and the hyperspace drive was overheating. "How long until we reach the neutral zone?" Hana asked, studying the star charts over Tae-ho's shoulder. 12 hours, if nothing else breaks," Tae-ho replied. "But we are leaving an energy trail that any Coalition ship can follow." In the passenger section, the 43 refugees were crowded into a space meant for 20 people. So Jin had organized sleeping schedules and food rationing. Minho was working constantly to repair damaged systems with whatever spare parts he could find. The children were asking fewer questions now. They understood they were running from something dangerous, even if they did not know all the details. The adults tried to stay calm, but everyone could feel the tension. Tae-ho checked the long-range sensors for the 100th time. Still clear, but that would not last. Commander Dae-sung would send hunters after them, the best of the best. Ships, fast enough to catch them and weapons powerful enough to destroy them. "Contact on sensors," Minho called from the engineering station. "Coalition destroyer, approaching fast." Tae-ho felt his heart sink. A destroyer meant serious hunting power, heavy weapons, advanced shields, and a crew trained to capture or kill traitors. "Can we outrun it?" Hana asked. "Not in this condition," Tae-ho admitted. "Our engines are too damaged." Through the communication system came a familiar voice. "Tae-ho, this is Captain Hyun-sik. I know you can hear me." Hyun-sik, Tae-ho's former mentor and training instructor, the Vorthak warrior who had taught him everything about combat and honor. If anyone could track them down, it would be Hyun-sik. "You have 60 seconds to surrender," Hyun-sik continued. "Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. This is your only chance." Tae-ho looked at the refugees around him. Families holding each other close. Children trying not to cry. Old people who had already lost everything and were hoping for a new start. "What do we do?" Sojin asked quietly. Taeho activated the communication system. "Captain Hyun-sik, this is Taeho." "My student." Hyun-sik's voice carried disappointment and sadness. "I taught you better than this. How could you betray everything we stand for?" "You taught me that honor means protecting the innocent," Taeho replied. "That is what I am doing." "These are not innocents. They are enemies of the coalition, threats to galactic peace." Taeho looked at a small girl who was sharing her food with an even smaller boy. "Look at them, Captain. Really look. Are these your enemies?" "I do not need to look," Hyun-sik replied. "I know what humans are. Aggressive, selfish, dangerous." "Then you know nothing," Taeho said. "I have lived with these people. I have seen their kindness, their courage, their willingness to sacrifice for each other." The communication channel was quiet for a moment. Then Hyun-sik spoke again, his voice colder. "You have been contaminated by exposure to human thinking, but you can still be saved. Surrender now, and I will make sure you receive treatment instead of execution." Treatment. Taeho knew what that meant. Mental conditioning to remove unwanted thoughts and feelings. They would erase everything that made him care about these people. "No," Taeho said simply. "Then you force me to take action," Hyun-sik replied. "All weapons, target their engines. Prepare to fire!" The destroyer's weapons locked onto the transport ship. Taeho had seconds to act. He pushed the engines to maximum power, knowing they might explode from the strain. The transport lurched forward, diving toward a nearby asteroid field. "Hold on," he called to the passengers. The ship twisted and turned between massive rocks floating in space. The Coalition destroyer followed, its superior maneuverability keeping it close behind. Weapons fire lit up the darkness as Hyun-sik tried to disable the transport without destroying it completely. "Why is he not using full power?" Hana asked, watching the tactical display. "He wants us alive," Taeho explained. "Dead traitors cannot be questioned." That gave them a small advantage. Hyun-sik had to be careful with his shots, while Taeho could take any risk necessary to escape. The transport scraped past an asteroid the size of a small moon. The hull groaned under the stress, and several hull plates tore away. But they were deeper into the asteroid field now, where the destroyer's size worked against it. "This ship is too big for these passages," Min-ho observed. "But we can fit through gaps he cannot." Taeho smiled grimly. "Then we go where he cannot follow." He guided the transport through a narrow canyon between two massive asteroids. The walls were so close that the ship's wings almost touched on both sides. Behind them, the destroyer had to stop and find another route. For 20 minutes, they played hide-and-seek among the asteroids. Taeho used every trick he had learned in 20 years of military service, but Hyun-sik had taught him most of those tricks. "He is learning our pattern," Taeho admitted. "Soon he will predict where we are going." That was when Sojin spoke up. "My husband was a ship captain before the war. He taught me about asteroid mining routes." She moved to the navigation console and began entering coordinates. "There is an old mining station about 2 hours from here, abandoned, but the tunnels might still be intact." "Tunnels?" Taeho asked. "Carved directly into the largest asteroid," Sojin explained. "Big enough for ships to hide inside. The miners used them to avoid storms. It was a desperate plan. The mining station might be collapsed or occupied by pirates, but staying in open space meant certain capture. Do it, Taeho decided. They broke from the asteroid field and accelerated toward Sojin's coordinates. The destroyer followed immediately, no longer bothering with careful shots. Hyun-sik was running out of patience. "Taeho," came his mentor's voice over the radio, "you cannot run forever, and you cannot protect those people by getting them killed." He was right. The transport was falling apart, and they were almost out of fuel. Even if they reached the mining station, what then? But Hana had been thinking about the same problem. The station might have supplies, fuel, spare parts, maybe even weapons. Or it might be a dead end that traps us, Taeho replied. Better than giving up, she said simply. As they approached the mining station, Taeho saw that Sojin had been right. Massive tunnels had been carved into the asteroid, large enough for industrial ships. Some of the tunnels were collapsed, but others looked intact. There, Minho pointed, to a tunnel entrance hidden behind a jutting rock formation. The destroyer will not see us enter if we approach from this angle. Taeho guided the transport into the tunnel just as the Coalition destroyer came into weapons range. They disappeared into the asteroid's interior seconds before Hyun-sik could get a target lock. Inside the tunnel, they found the remains of the mining operation, old equipment, empty fuel tanks, and worker quarters that had been abandoned years ago. But there were also things they could use, spare parts that Minho could adapt to their ship, emergency supplies left behind by the miners. How long before he finds us? Hana asked. Taeho checked the sensors. The destroyer was circling the asteroid, scanning for their energy signature. A few hours, maybe less. He knows we are here somewhere. Then we better work fast, Sojin said, already organizing the refugees to help with repairs. For the next 3 hours, they worked desperately to repair their ship and gather supplies. Minho performed miracles with spare parts and scrap metal. The refugees helped however they could, even the children carrying tools and materials. But time was running out. Hyun-sik had found their tunnel and was working his way inside. Soon there would be nowhere left to run. Looking at the people around, Taeho made another decision that would change everything. Running was no longer enough. If they wanted to survive, they would have to fight. The mining station's main chamber echoed with the sound of approaching engines. Captain Hyun-sik had found their hiding place and was bringing his boarding shuttles inside the asteroid. There was nowhere left to run. Taeho gathered the refugees in the deepest part of the station, where old mining equipment provided some protection. 43 people looked at him with trust and fear, waiting to see what he would do next. Stay here, he told them. No matter what happens, do not come out until I call for you. Hana stepped beside him. I am coming with you. No, Taeho said firmly. This is between Vorthak warriors. You cannot help with this fight. These are my people too, she replied. I have a right to defend them. Sojin was organizing the other adults to protect the children. Minho had found some old mining tools that could be used as weapons if necessary. Even facing certain death, the humans were taking care of each other. The sound of boots on metal echoed through the tunnels. Coalition soldiers were moving through the station, searching room by room. It would not take long for them to find the main chamber. Taeho checked his weapon one last time. He had enough ammunition for maybe 10 minutes of fighting. Against trained Coalition soldiers, that was not much, but it might be enough to make a statement. Taeho, Hyun-sik's voice came from the tunnel entrance. I know you are here. Come, out, and face me. There was no point in hiding anymore. Taeho walked into the open area of the main chamber, his weapon ready, but not raised. He wanted to see his former mentor one more time before this ended. Hyun-sik emerged from the shadows, with 6 Coalition soldiers behind him. His armor was polished and perfect, just as Taeho remembered from their training days. But his face showed sadness and disappointment. My best student, Hyun-sik said quietly. Look what you have become. I have become what you taught me to be, Taeho replied. A protector of innocent life. You have become a traitor to your own species, Hyun-sik corrected. These humans have poisoned your mind with their weakness and sentiment. The 2 warriors began circling each other slowly. The Coalition soldiers held their positions, understanding that this was a matter of honor between teacher and student. They showed me strength I never knew existed, Taeho said. The strength to help others, even when it costs everything. Helping the enemy is not strength, Hyun-sik replied. It is madness. Then look at them yourself, Tae-ho challenged. See these terrible enemies you fear so much. Hana stepped out from behind the mining equipment. Then So-jin, holding two small children by the hands. Minho followed, along with the other refugees. All 43 humans stood in the open, facing the coalition soldiers with quiet dignity. Children and old people, Tae-ho continued. Families trying to survive. Are these the monsters that threaten the galaxy? Hyun-sik looked at the refugees for the first time. Tae-ho saw something flicker in his mentor's eyes. Doubt, maybe. Or recognition that these were not the savage enemies he had been told about. It does not matter what they look like, Hyun-sik said finally. Orders are orders. They are to be eliminated. Even the children? Tae-ho asked. Especially the children, came a new voice from the tunnel entrance. Commander Dae-sung emerged with more soldiers, his black armor reflecting the mining station's lights. Human children grow up to be human soldiers. Tae-ho felt cold anger rising in his chest. You would murder children in the name of Galactic peace? I would do whatever is necessary, Dae-sung replied. Just as you should have done instead of betraying your own people. The commander gestured to his soldiers. Execute them all. Start with the children so the adults can watch. That was when Hyun-sik spoke up. Sir, with respect, these are non-combatants. Military protocol requires following orders, Dae-sung interrupted. Which you will, do now, or join the traitor. Tae-ho watched his mentor's face carefully. Hyun-sik was a career soldier who had never questioned orders in his life, but he was also an honorable warrior who believed in protecting the innocent. Captain, Dae-sung said coldly, I am waiting. Hyun-sik looked at the human children, then at Tae-ho, then at his commander. For a long moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the breathing of frightened refugees and the hum of the mining station's old machinery. No, Hyun-sik said quietly. What? Did you say? Dae-sung demanded. I said no! Hyun-sik's voice was stronger now. I will not execute children, I will not murder families, and I will not follow orders that go against everything we claim to stand for. Dae-sung's hand went to his weapon. Then you are a traitor too. The coalition soldiers looked confused. Half of them served under Hyun-sik and respected him greatly. The other half followed Dae-sung's orders without question. For a moment, nobody knew what to do. Choose sides, Dae-sung commanded. Follow your captain into disgrace or serve the coalition with honor. 3 soldiers moved to stand beside Dae-sung. The other 3 stepped closer to Hyun-sik. The group was split down the middle. This ends now, Dae-sung said, raising his weapon toward the refugees. Tae-ho moved faster than thought. His shot took Dae-sung in the chest, spinning the commander around and sending him crashing into the tunnel wall. The battle erupted instantly. Coalition soldiers fired at each other across the chamber. Hyun-sik and his loyal men fought against Dae-sung's followers, while Tae-ho tried to keep the crossfire away from the refugees. The fighting was brutal and close. In the confined space of the mining station, every shot echoed like thunder. Sparks flew from damaged equipment, and the lights flickered as power systems took damage. One of Dae-sung's soldiers tried to circle around toward the refugees. Hana hit him with a mining tool, dropping him to the ground. So-jin and Minho helped drag wounded coalition soldiers to safety, treating even their enemies with medical care. The battle lasted only 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. When the weapons fire finally stopped, 4 coalition soldiers were dead. Dae-sung was badly wounded, but still alive. The others were hurt, but would survive. Hyun-sik walked over to where Tae-ho was checking on the refugees. None of the humans had been seriously injured, though several were shaken by the violence. You were right, Hyun-sik said quietly. About honor, about protecting innocent life. What will you do now? Tae-ho asked. His former mentor looked around the chamber, at the human families comforting their children, at coalition soldiers being treated by human medical workers, at the strange mix of species that had come together to defend each other. Help you get these people to safety, Hyun-sik replied, and then figure out how to stop this war before it destroys everything decent in the galaxy. Tae-ho felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They were no longer alone. They had allies now, other Vorthak warriors who understood that true honor meant protecting the innocent, not following evil orders. The fight was far from over. The coalition would send more hunters, more soldiers, more commanders like Dae-sung, but they would face them together. Humans and Vorthak united by something stronger than species loyalty. They would face them with honor. 6 months after the battle at the mining station, Tae-ho stood on the observation deck of the refugee ship Liberty's Hope. Through the reinforced windows, he could see 3 human colony worlds in the distance, their blue and green surfaces, untouched by war. The ship was much larger than the transport they had escaped in. Built from salvaged coalition vessels and human technology, it served as both home and headquarters for the growing resistance movement. Over 200 beings lived aboard now. Humans, Vorthak, and even some members of other species who had grown tired of coalition oppression. The medical bay is ready for the next group of patients, Hana said, joining him at the window. She wore a uniform that mixed human and Vorthak designs, showing her role as chief medical officer for their mixed crew. Tae-ho nodded. They had just rescued 50 coalition soldiers from a prison camp where they had been left to die after questioning their orders. Half were Vorthak warriors like himself. The other half were humans who had been captured and tortured. Any word from Captain Hyun-sik? Hana asked. His message came through this morning, Tae-ho replied. 3 more coalition units have joined our cause. He estimates we now have allies in over 20 sectors. It was amazing how quickly things had changed. The story of Tae-ho's rebellion had spread throughout coalition space, inspiring other soldiers to question their orders. Hyun-sik had become the leader of the military resistance, organizing defections and sabotaging coalition operations from within. So-jin approached them carrying a data pad. The elderly woman had become their chief of communications, managing contact with resistance cells across the galaxy. We have received another transmission from Earth, she reported. Tae-ho felt his heart skip. Earth. The human homeworld that had been cut off from its colonies for almost 3 years. If they had re-established contact, it could change everything. Play it, he said. The holographic display showed a human male in military uniform. His insignia identified him as Admiral Kyung-soo of the Korean Space Defense Force. Behind him, Tae-ho could see what looked like a military command center. This message is for all human colonies and resistance forces, the Admiral began. Earth has successfully developed new defensive technologies. We are no longer helpless against coalition attacks. The message continued with technical details about shield generators and faster-than-light communication systems. But what impressed Tae-ho most was the Admiral's tone. Confident but not aggressive, strong but not cruel. We are prepared to negotiate with any coalition forces willing to end this war honorably, Admiral Kyung-soo continued. Our goal is not conquest, but coexistence. We believe all species can live together in peace if they choose to respect each other. The message ended with coordinates for a meeting point in neutral space. Earth was offering to talk instead of fight. It was the first real hope for peace since the war began. What do you think? Hana asked. Tae-ho considered carefully. In the past 6 months, he had learned to trust human judgment. These people did not lie about wanting peace. When they said they preferred negotiation to war, they meant it. I think Admiral Kyung-soo is someone we can work with, he decided. Min-ho joined their group, wiping grease from his hands. The young engineer had become their head of ship operations, keeping their salvaged fleet running with creativity and determination. "The new refugees are settling in well," he reported. "The coalition soldiers are having some trouble adjusting, but they are starting to understand our mission." That was always the hardest part. Coalition soldiers were trained to see humans as enemies. It took time for them to realize that the resistance was fighting for everyone's freedom, not just human victory. "Speaking of our mission," Sojin said, "we have received requests for help from 14 different worlds. All of them are reporting coalition atrocities against civilian populations." Taeho felt the familiar weight of responsibility. Every day more people needed their help. Every day the resistance had to choose who to save and who to leave behind. The decisions never got easier. "We cannot save everyone," Hana said gently, reading his thoughts. "But we can save some. And everyone we save helps us save more." She was right, as always. In 6 months, their small group of refugees had grown into a movement that spanned dozens of star systems. Every person they rescued became another voice speaking out against coalition oppression. Every soldier they converted became a protector instead of an oppressor. "There is something else," Sojin added. "We have received a personal message for you, Taeho." The holographic display changed to show a familiar face. It was Taeho's sister Yoon Seo, speaking from their home planet. She looked older and more tired than he remembered, but her eyes held the same warmth he had known since childhood. "Brother," she said simply, "I know what you have done. I know why you did it. And I want you to know that our family is proud of you." Taeho felt tears in his eyes. He had not spoken to his family since becoming a fugitive. He had assumed they would be ashamed of his betrayal of the coalition. "Many people here are starting to ask questions about the war," Yoon Seo continued. "Your actions have made them think about what honor really means, what protecting innocent life really means." The message included news from home. Their parents were safe, but under coalition surveillance. Several of Taeho's old friends had been arrested for questioning coalition policies. The resistance was spreading even to the Vorthak homeworld. When the message ended, Hana took his hand. "You started something that cannot be stopped," she said. "People across the galaxy are choosing to stand up for what is right." Taeho looked around the observation deck. Coalition soldiers and human refugees worked side by side, preparing for their next rescue mission. Different species, different backgrounds, but united by a common belief that all people deserve to live free from oppression. "We should respond to Admiral Kyung-soo's message," he decided. "It is time to see if this war can end with words instead of weapons." "Agreed," said a familiar voice from behind them. Captain Hyun-sik had arrived aboard his own ship, bringing 50 more defectors from the coalition fleet. "I have authorization from resistance cells in 40 sectors to negotiate on their behalf." Taeho clasped his former mentor's arm in greeting. "Then we go to meet the Admiral, all of us together." As they prepared for the journey to neutral space, Taeho thought about how much had changed since that first day in the Crystal Forest. He had started as a soldier following orders without question. Now he was a leader fighting for the rights of all sentient beings. The war was not over. There would be more battles, more difficult choices, more people who needed saving. But for the first time since it all began, Taeho could see a path toward peace. Standing beside Hana as their ship jumped to hyperspace, he felt something he had never experienced as a coalition warrior. Hope, not just for victory, but for a future where humans and Vorthak and all the other species could live together as equals. Outside the ship's windows, the stars stretched into lines of light, carrying them toward whatever came next, but they would face it together, as partners, as friends, as proof that love and understanding could bridge any gap, even between different worlds. The rebellion had become something greater than any of them had imagined. It had become a promise that tomorrow could be better than today, if people were willing to fight for it with courage and compassion, and in the end, that promise was worth everything they had sacrificed to protect it.